Thank you very much, Chris, for inviting me to come here and be a part of this meeting. It's definitely a pleasure to be here to speak with all of you about a topic I've been looking at for quite a few years. You're also here to hear, I think, some very good talks from three individuals that have a lot of insightful information to share with you. We also have a great collection of posters from individuals doing research, associations doing observations, programs, agencies that have some information for us around this topic. So please take the time to go and look at the posters when we have a poster break. My duties are to be the MC for this, but I also have just a little bit of a time to provide some words I think that are important in terms of what I see are some of the biggest issues in terms of climate today. And with that, I'm going to start with this, this slide right here. And I told Chris last night when I got to thinking about what to talk about here, I pulled this slide out as something that I made in 2007. So it was 18 years ago that I put this slide together, and I only have changed one word in those 18 years. And I think it's really important because climate change is this a factor that affects us, but we're not doing what we're doing in the face of one perturbation going on around us. There are so many other things that influence us overall. And again, these words were exactly what they were in 2007. National to international economics. It couldn't even be more important now as we stand here today. Declining demand and oversupply issues, changing demographics, health concerns, new markets, new consumers, new wine styles, production and movement of bulk wine, which is just absolutely huge. If you've never been to a bulk wine conference, you should go. It'll blow you away. Challenges from other beverages, of course, and then demand for greater sustainability. So 18 years ago, this was on the forefront of my mind in a talk, and here we are again, thinking about it. And I think it really holds true to where we are. So when we think about our resilience in terms of climate, we have to really look at it as a portfolio of things that we're doing. And I think that's a really important aspect of why we're here today and what we do in our businesses and lifestyle in this sector. I'm only going to show you two images in this entire talk, and I know that most of you have seen something like this, know these things. These are just observations. This is done by Copernicus in Europe, and they're an agency there that is really, I think, come to the forefront of global climate observational networks. And the two big things I wanted to point out here are that years ago, when I first got started in this arena, there was a lot of unknowns and uncertainties about how we were monitoring our planet in terms of its climate. And it used to be that there was some differences in the numbers, but they're all kind of lining up today. They're lining up to the point that everybody agrees. All of the governments of Japan, Australia, the United States, the UK, the rest of the European Union are working together now, and you can see that where we are today, our knowledge of our climate system is very tight. It's not uncertain anymore. So we are in a place, of course, where we are clearly in a warm environment. Persistence in the climate system means that it's likely to continue. And so those are really important aspects of this. The other piece of this is that even though these are observations, I want to talk just briefly about modeling. Everybody knows kind of what modeling is all about. You take a system, you try to understand it, and then you produce a digital mathematical model of that. Well, we know how the climate system works. We don't have it all dialed in perfectly, but we know how it works. Back when I first started in climate science, back in the early 90s, the first climate model that I used in some work that we were doing at the University of Virginia at the time was very crude in terms of both time and space, meaning that we were looking at the planet as 5 degree by 5 degree grid boxes. You can't really tell much at the local level when you're doing that. but that's what we had. We also had timestamps of either annual or seasonal, and monthly started becoming available. Today we have daily to hourly. So we're in a very different world in terms of our modeling today. But the first models that I worked with back then, we were all pointing to 2020 to 2025 as our point of looking at the future back then. And I can tell you, going back and looking at that results, you can see that they were pretty close to right. They were within a half a standard deviation of the global temperatures of today. So this is the take home for me. If we were working with very crude time and space models back then, we were learning more and more about the entire system, and yet we were pretty close to where we are today. Our models of today are so much more advanced, and there's so many more components of them that allow us to understand what's happening in our climate system. So I look at that as saying, trust them. They're not perfect, but trust them. It's good information. And with that, you should really be looking at some of the things that are out there. Oregon, I think in either December or January, completed its Oregon Climate Change Assessment Report. Maybe people here from OSU can mention some of that in the poster session, but it's available now. You can go look at it. It's got some really good information. So anyway, that's kind of my take home with this whole climate is unstable kind of framework, except for I want to highlight a few things that I think are important. We recently published a paper looking at biomes, large ecosystem kind of structures in the world. And it's pretty clear that climate types are shifting pretty much everywhere all over the globe. And this is how they're shifting. Polar climates are shrinking, especially in the northern hemisphere. Tropical and arid regions are expanding into the mid-latitudes. Temperate Mediterranean climate zones are shrinking. They're getting hotter and drier, putting more demands on things like water. Temperate, humid subtropical zones are increasing, putting more challenges in the disease realm for people growing grapes in those areas. And then dry, semi-arid hot zones are increasing, putting more demands on water in places that don't have much to begin with. You can also talk about extremes, and I know a couple of our speakers, both Chris and Aaron, will be talking a little bit about water and climate extremes, but there's this new term out there, hydroclimatic volatility. There's some really good research coming out of different places in Western areas of continents, especially Australia and the United States, looking at this issue of sudden, large, and/or frequent transitions between very dry and very wet conditions. So this it's playing out. There's a pretty good paper that was just published in January on this topic. It's driven by the rising water vapor holding capacity of the atmosphere and what that potential evaporative demand is requiring. So the atmosphere being warmer wants more moisture. So it's trying to pull it out of the ground or out of water surfaces. We know from this research that subseasonal, meaning within a winter or within a spring, that kind of situation, or interannual whiplashes, as they've been calling them, have increased by 31 to 66% and 8 to 31% respectively. And this is happening largely in West Coast regions like where we live. So this idea that we have this volatility and it's only getting greater within a warming climate. We can also talk about heat extremes. We've experienced some of these ourselves here, that's pretty clear. Globally, heat extremes have increased while cold extremes have decreased. Record warm extremes today are occurring 15 to 25 times the rate of record cold extremes. If we lived in a stable climate, it would be close to 50-50. You can look back at history and you can see times when it was close to 50-50. We're not there right now. Additionally, the magnitude of multiple successive heat events or temperature extreme events is occurring much more greater in warmer events than cold events. Cold events don't go away, but heat extreme events are becoming much more prominent. Winter temperature variability is kind of an issue. We think about kind of some of the issues that hit British Columbia the past few years, where extreme cold really hit them hard. This variability in cold regions suggests a reduction in frequency and intensity of cold extremes relative to mean changes. But cold air outbreaks in the mid-latitudes where we live and elsewhere in the mid-latitudes are becoming more likely because of how the polar area is warming. You know, New Orleans got 8 inches of snow not too long ago. At the same time that northern Alaska and northern Canada were 40 to 50 degrees Fahrenheit above normal. And that's kind of this perturbation kind of issue where a warming polar system has a tendency to be much more variable as it pushes that air out into the mid-latitudes. But as I've said before, winter freeze events and spring frost events do not go away in a warmer world. They just become a little less frequent, and their severity might be a little bit less, but they're still there. They're not completely out of the system. Just a couple of comments on wine sector responses. I don't have all the answers here clearly, but I think we have to really consider how do we manage the plant system that we're working with, the environment that it's planted in. How do we manage the production system that we're working in? And how do we manage the human system? Because we all have to work together in this framework. I really don't think there's a silver bullet here, that's for sure. I think a portfolio of responses are required to increase our resilience in the face of climate change and the other things that are happening around us. Number one, I think we're all here because we're good stewards of land and water, but we need to be better. We just need to be better, and we need to teach other people how to be better. I think that's really important. We also have to realize that agriculture is both part of the problem and part of the solution. Therefore, we have to understand what can we do that are solid mitigation efforts to limit climate change from our sector. And I think we're doing some really good work in that arena, but I think we need to do more. That's pretty clear. And then most people are pointing to the fact that even if we do all the mitigation we possibly can do, that we're going to have to adapt. And how does that adaptation look like? It really comes down to regional responses that we all learn from each other in terms of how we can look at our production system and manage it within this framework. There are no one adaptation that you can do that'll make all the difference in the world, but there's a portfolio of things that we need to look at, and we can learn a little bit about those here today. And then lastly, this is something I've been pushing for a long time. We need to utilize or at least better understand the genetic diversity that is happening around us within Vitis vinifera. Right now today, roughly 15 varieties make up 70% of the world's plantings. And we have over 5,000 individual Vitis vinifera varieties to play with. And we're not doing enough with them to better understand it. Whether it's resilience to temperature extremes, drought extremes, other aspects of the climate system, or other aspects of the environments we're growing in, we need to be looking at this. There's just so much to learn there. It's a hard choice because, of course, we have to deal with what we grow, we have to sell. So we have to think about that. But I think that looking at genetic diversity is really an important component of kind of what we do. And with that, that's what I'd like to say today. I'm going to be with you the rest of the day, but I did want to let everybody know that while I've gone to Abacela and I'm the CEO there now, my parents have retired, I still dabble in research. I have 2 academic appointments at the University of Adelaide and then at Southern Oregon University. So I still do a few things. I still serve on committees with students, and I still do quite a bit of stuff that I really enjoy. As my wife says, she finds me at the computer way too often doing things that don't relate to the business. But I still keep my website too, climatewine.com, and I'm writing reports monthly on weather and climate issues if you're interested. But with that, I really appreciate it. And what I'd like to do now is invite Aaron Upton up to come talk about water issues. And so while I exchange this, come on up, Aaron.